What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm making this video today as I've been telling you guys for the past few days. This week I'm going to be making a series of videos starting today, going all the way through Sunday, doing a breakdown of the different positions on the Dolphins roster, taking a look at the players that we currently have, as well as looking at some potential draft prospects and potential free agents, or looking at the free agent market a little bit and what's out there. And so I'm doing 7 videos in total, one each day this week, and today I'm starting with the defensive secondary. The secondary, I'm doing cornerbacks and safeties. I'm going to take a look at them, discuss them. Tomorrow I will be doing linebackers. Wednesday will be defensive line, so tackles and defensive ends. And then let's see, Thursday will be offensive line. Friday will be wide receivers and tight ends. Saturday will be running backs, and Sunday, or running backs / fullbacks. And Sunday will be my video on the quarterback position. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the Dolphins roster currently as it stands. Like I said, this is going to be cornerbacks and safeties, so I'll be jumping around between those positions. But let's start with, let's see, Walt Aikens here. I'm looking at the Dolphins roster on MiamiDolphins.com. I just pulled it up on there, so I'm looking at their current roster, and we have safety Walt Aikens is the first one that I see. And so look, Walt Aikens, he's been I'm pretty sure he's the longest tenured Dolphin that we have on the team currently. He's been a special teams ace. He's been a key guy in that regard, and he's been a solid backup. But that's pretty much, the extent of who Walt Aikens is. I think he's a good player. I think he's been a good player for us in that role and in that regard. And I think that there is a likelihood that he will end up being back next season. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. I mean, he's, like I said, he fits great in that special team / backup role. But he is getting older. He is 28 now, and we'll see if he wants to stay, or if maybe he wants to seek an opportunity elsewhere. Then we have Nate Brooks, who's 23. He was a rookie this year. Walt Aikens has 6 years in the NFL at this point. Nate Brooks was a rookie. We don't know that much about him at this point. We have very little tape. Some of it was okay, some of it was not okay up to this point. So, we'll have to wait and see. I think it's likely he'll be around in training camp at the very least going forward. So we'll see how that goes. Adrian Colbert he has 3 years in the NFL at this point. He's a safety, and he did some good things. He showed some flashes. I think he's one of the, slightly more upside and slightly higher potential of the guys that they brought in, the myriad of guys that were brought in for the secondary to patch it all up. Like I said, he showed some flashes this season, especially at a position that got thin, and we're definitely going to need some help at safety. We'll get to him in a minute, but Rashad Jones, I don't think is unfortunately going to be around in a Dolphins uniform much longer. And so, he's 26. It's his 3rd year in the league. And so he's definitely a guy I would expect to be in camp at the very least, and would probably likely make the team. Let's see, who do we got next? We have Montre Hardage, also a safety. He's 22. He was a rookie this season. He also was, again, a very young guy that we don't really know much about. I expect he'll be in camp, et cetera, et cetera. He is another guy that had, a couple, flashy plays. A couple of nice moments, some pass breakups and stuff like that. I think he even might have had like an interception, if I'm not mistaken. So like I said, I expect he'll also be in training camp, somebody to keep our eye on, because, especially at safety, and, he's a safety, and we're definitely going to need that, like, pretty much the entire secondary, aside from, like, Bobby McCain. I mean, they need to put him, though, back at slot corner. But we'll talk more about him in a minute. And then, Xavier Howard. But we need, obviously, somebody opposite him. And then we need good, solid backups and depth. And then, obviously, corners and safeties are guys that also play on special teams as, like, gunners and stuff like that. So, we got to have guys that can play well and at a high level as backups and as special teams guys as well. So Montre Hardage is another guy to look at, and will likely be in camp and could potentially make the team. Another rookie is Tay Hayes. He was a guy that we picked up somewhere off somebody's practice squad or something like that. He's 22. Again, don't really know much about him yet, so just a guy at least in camp. We'll see if he can develop and turn into something. Then we have Nick Needham. So he was a rookie. He's 23, and he was probably out of all of them, out of all of the like 50 guys that were in our secondary this season, he's probably the one that showed the most, had the most flashes, and has the most potential going for it, I think. He also did have several penalties, and, he did get a little bit banged up, and, he got beat in some coverages. But again, he's a rookie, and those are things that he can clean up with, time and development, and he can get past. I think he definitely has the highest potential out of, like, almost any of the other guys that we have in the secondary. And so I 100% expect him to be in training camp, and I would definitely expect him to make the team next season, barring something crazy, or, I don't know. So definitely, again, a guy to keep your eyes on. Next, we have Steven Parker. So he's 24. He's got 1 year in the league already. He was all right. He had a couple nice moments, but again, another young guy that we don't know much about. And look, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, though, and I'll be honest, right? Because I don't have, I don't have the time and ability to watch as much of, the NFL or, college as I would like. So I don't, and I don't have the time and the resources to do as much research as I would like. So I'm not an expert by any means. And so it's definitely difficult to be able to tell, who's going to, for sure be in camp and stuff like that, or who's going to make the team, especially considering the fact that there are so many guys, like, going to be coming off an injured reserve, etc. And we know there's going to be a ton of roster turnover. But I would venture to guess that most of these young players that they have brought in will at least be in camp in, the 90-man roster. And then obviously, as we go through camp, see who develops further, who shows flashes and shows consistency. Then we'll start to be able to formulate a better idea of who we think's actually going to stick on the team. But Steven Parker should likely be in camp. Let's see. Then we have Eric Rowe. Well, we know that he's going to be on the team for the next few years. They signed a contract extension with him. He's all right, and he played a lot of safety. He's got 5 years in the league. He's 27. He's all right. But and I think the thing with Eric Rowe is I don't think I think he's pretty close to his ceiling, so, and we definitely need to do better than that. But I mean, certainly having him for next season, is good, because he's definitely one of your better, pieces in that secondary at the moment. But we obviously have to get a lot better. We need to get to the point where Eric Rowe is one of your backups, right? And not one of your starting guys. So, let's see. Then we have Lyndon Stevens, cornerback. He's got 1 year in the league. He's 24. Don't really know anything about him, so we'll see if he's even in camp. We'll see what happens with him. Then we have Jamal Wiltz. He's 25, got 1 year in the league. He had some good moments as well. Another guy that showed, some flashes, but, like, most of these guys, they're just all right. They're just all right, you know. And but to be fair, of course, also the entire team was intentionally designed to not be good. So, you know, I mean, that's the thing and they're all, most of these guys are really super young, as is pretty much the entire roster, right? So, you know, with a lot of these guys, the narrative is going to be the same. We have to wait and see, you know, how they're going to end up developing. But I would expect Jamal Wiltz to be, you know, in camp, and he's got a good chance of making the roster as well. Let's see. Then we have Rashard Kazi. He was signed to a futures contract. He was a rookie this year. He's 23, so, you know, and I think he was on our practice squad because all of the guys that we signed to futures contracts were on our practice squad. So he was on our practice squad this past season, at least for some time. And so he's got a futures contract. He'll be in camp. Let's see. Then we have, so moving to guys that are on injured reserve as of right now, we have Xavier Howard, of course. It's his 4th year in the league. He's 26. Obviously, he's our star cornerback. We know he's going to be on the roster, you know, as long as, of course, we did the one, there's a couple minor downsides. One is you have his, you know, recent domestic violence issue. Hopefully he's learned. Hopefully he can come past that. Hopefully he can make amends and fix the problem and move past it and never have it happen ever again. But unfortunately, the reality is it's there. It happened. It is on his record. People will think about that, etc., etc. So it is there. Plus, you know, he's had a few knee injuries and a few knee surgeries at this point to varying levels, from scopes to actual surgeries, or, you know, larger surgeries. And also he's, you know, he's 26, so he is going to be moving towards the back end of his prime over the next few years, right? As he creeps closer to 30, etc. So, and then of course the Dolphins also did structure his contract extension, which he is locked up on the team in that regard for the next few years, 4 years, I believe. But they structured his contract so where he's got, you know, pretty much all of his guaranteed money already, and so they could, you know, it's super tradable to other teams. Now, obviously, depending on how the legal things go, I mean, you know, I mean, it seems to be pretty much like wrapped up, like, you know, he's taking his punishment and that's what it is. The league still hasn't officially, you know, put anything down, but there's going to be, you know, there could likely be like a 4-game suspension. Maybe he appeals it and gets 2, you know, something along those lines. But for the most part, we do expect that he will obviously be there, and he's, you know, our star corner at this point, and one of literally the only real, like, fundamental building piece that we have, besides, you know, maybe the other one you could lump in is Devontae Parker, but that's obviously a receiver and for another video. Anyway, so I mean, I love X. I hope I really hope that he can get past the legal issues and domestic issues and never have it happen again. And then I hope he comes back out, and he comes back out healthy and stays healthy, and we can move forward with that. Then we have Rashad Jones. He's 31. He's been in the league 10 years. He's one of the longest tenured Dolphins too, obviously, besides Walt Aikens. I'm not sure which one's been here longer, but anyway, I unfortunately don't think that Rashad Jones will be here for much longer. I think that they probably, I mean, maybe if like he restructures his contract or something, but I think it's likely they're going to end up getting rid of Rashad Jones. He's had shoulder surgery on both shoulders. He's been, you know, really banged up. He's been having a hard time staying on the field, etc., etc. And he, you know, he's 31. He's been in the league 10 years. He's taken a beating as a, you know, hard pounding in the box safety. And I love him, you know, and I would love for him to retire as a Dolphin. But unless he decides to do that, I think it's probably, especially too, because he's got a pretty high cap number as well. And he's one of the highest cap charges that we have. And so I think it's probably pretty likely that they'll end up getting rid of him, especially with all the young guys that they do have, even though that, the talent level is considerably less. You know, but we'll see. We'll see. Then we have Ryan Lewis, cornerback. He's been in the year 2 years. You know, again, another guy, had a few flash plays. He's a young guy, you know, should be in camp, etc. We'll see. Then we have Bobby McCain, been in the league 5 years. Obviously, I love Bobby, but you know, I thought it was a terrible idea to put him at safety to begin with, especially when you had, you know, Rashad Jones, TJ McDonald, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Walt Aikens, all those guys. It didn't make any sense to me, and then he got hurt. And what? He had shoulder injuries like safeties often get. And so, you know, I think that's one injury in particular that you really can blame on the coaching staff in this front office, because they strip, you know, I mean, even if you want to give the coaching staff the best benefit of the doubt that you can and say, well, they stripped this roster down so far, even though Flores admitted that he had a hand in all 200 plus transactions that were made, but, you know, they stripped the team down as far as, you know, as it was, and then you know, they had to do it because they needed flexibility, etc., etc. You really didn't, because you had guys, Rashad Jones and TJ McDonald, who could be your strong safety and a good rotation there. And then you had Minkah Fitzpatrick, who, if you just let him ball out at free safety, he would do that for you, and could still be on your roster and might not have wanted to leave town because of that shit, along with the tanking philosophy, right? So, you know, they just shouldn't have used him there. He needs to go back to the slot, and that's it, point blank, period. That's where, I mean, that's what he got paid for, and that's what he should be, you know, where he should be playing. Then we have Aqib Talib. He's 33. He's been in the league 12 years. He was essentially, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we got him in a trade with the Rams. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And it was essentially, we got him and a 5th round pick, and we ate some of his contract, I believe, we ate like $5 million of his contract, and it was essentially just purchasing that 5th round pick. You know, because he said he was healthy to play. The Dolphins said, we're putting you on injured reserve. And, you know, like I said, I mean, he's been in the league for 12 years. We got all these young guys. Even though, you know, he could be a good piece to at least keep around for a while to help, like, you know, mentor some of these guys up and have as a good, solid veteran presence in that secondary opposite Howard. We'll see how that plays out, but I think it's probably more likely that they're going to end up getting rid of him. Although, actually, if I'm being honest, I actually would like to have him stick around as that veteran presence opposite Howard until, you know, one of the young guys proves that they can, you know, take that seat from him. And, you know, he can help mentor them as well. I mean, it's 12 years of experience. And he could be good for Xavier Howard as well. Then you have Ken Webster, another young guy that he's a rookie. He's 23, showed some flashes, should be in camp. And then let's see, we have Tankersley as well, Cordray Tankersley. I mean, he showed some good things in his first season, and then he, you know, he got injured. I think his first season, if I'm not mistaken, was in 2016, and you know, we had a solid secondary back then. And, you know, Xavier Howard was locking it down. And, you know, we had Bobby McCain and Rashad Jones and all these guys that were playing really well. And we had, you know, we still didn't have that corner opposite Howard. But we, you know, we obviously we didn't have it then. We don't have it now. But we had, you know, like a few solid guys to play there. That did well, and he actually performed well. I think he actually even led the team in interceptions that year, if I'm not mistaken. He had a few of them anyway, but then he got injured and he lost his confidence, and then he just hasn't really even been the same since. And so we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I mean, he's only been in the league 3 years. He's still, you know, on his rookie contract, but this would be his last year on that. So we'll have to see what happens with him. overall, as far as the guys that are on our roster, again, it really comes down to, we have Xavier Howard, who's our lockdown corner, like the for sure thing guy. He's got a contract for the next 4 years, but he has some off the field issue stuff that hopefully will just be, put behind him at this point. He's likely to have to deal with some sort of suspension going into the 2020 season. Hopefully, not more than like 2 games. But then after him, we've got Bobby McCain in the slot corner, as a slot corner, which is where he should be. Hopefully that's where he'll go back to going forward. Rashad Jones, I don't think will be around. And then pretty much everybody else is just a bunch of, young guys. Nick Needham's really the best one of the bunch. Maybe Adrian Colbert as, probably the best out of all the safeties. And, but they're all super young, and we just need to wait and see what happens. But I would suspect that they're likely all going to be in camp and, competing for those spots. So we'll really have to wait and look toward, training camp to see who rises to the top. So far it's, Nick Needham and Colbert, like I said, I would say are probably like some of the top guys there. All right, so now let's look at free agents and some of the top free agents that are available or expected to be, or potentially could be available. As I mentioned, Aqib Talib, we have him. We'll see how that goes. I mean, he's got $9.5 million hit for 2019 cap charge. But we have guys like Chris Harris, Jimmy Smith, Logan Ryan, Bradley Roby, Ronald Darby, Brandon Carr. All these guys though are, Ronald Darby is out of all those guys the youngest at 26, but they're all pretty expensive. But you got Tremont Williams, I mean, he's 37, Jonathan Joseph's 36. A lot of these guys are over 30 years old. So, I mean, Darquez Darnett, Eli Apple's 25, but he's been struggling and overall, I mean, he hasn't lived up to his draft potential or draft status to this point. Trey Waynes is a really intriguing one. He's 28, but he has a very small cap charge for 2019, and he could come relatively cheap. So Trey Waynes would be a guy that I would, be interested to see because if the Dolphins could get him to put opposite, I mean, you can get rid of Aqib Talib, and get rid of his cap charge, etc., and his aging body, whatever, right? And Trey Waynes would be a really intriguing piece opposite Xavier Howard in that secondary. And you could actually probably get him relatively cheap. And, again, I'm not an expert or have the kind of knowledge or information to be able to speak very intelligently on like scheme fits, but I think he's from what I do know of him, I think that he could be like I said, an intriguing piece opposite Xavier Howard. So there are some names out there. Most of these guys, like I said, are pretty old. I mean, the youngest one, like I said, that I've seen, Daryl Worley, is also 25. I mean, 25 is about as young as they get, so they're in the middle of their prime, to the end of their prime. And I mean, there's tons of guys out there. Cyrus Jones, Johnson Batamosi, although we got rid of him for whatever random ass reason. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, Mackenzie Alexander, Tremaine Brock. There's a lot of Bashad Breeland, Morris Claiborne, Rashawn Melvin. Those, and that's just corners. So there's plenty of names out there that are Trey Waynes, like I said, is probably one of the most intriguing for me as far as corners go. Let's look at free safeties. Devin McCourty, but he's got a $9.5 million cap charge, but and obviously he plays with New England. Not quite so likely to be gotten rid of. Rodney McLeod, Jimmy Ward, Clinton Dix. It would be an interesting, or Trey Boston, would be interesting pieces in that back end. Looks like Walt Aikens is going to be a free agent for us, so we'll see what ends up, like I said, we'll see what ends up happening there. I mean, the ones that stick out to me, Michael Thomas, Trey Boston, Clinton Dix. I don't know. Let's see. I mean, Justin Simmons maybe. Adrian Colbert, he's a free agent, but obviously he's currently on the team, and I do expect him to, and he's obviously really cheap. I do expect him to be back on the team. So there's a few guys at free safety that would be intriguing. And let's look at strong safety real quick. And most of those guys are actually pretty cheap. I mean, none of the free safeties or strong safeties, hardly any of them, and the ones that we would be likely to pick up, aren't really going to come with too high a cap charge. So free agency is probably a place that we would actually really want to look for safeties for sure, and then, you know, maybe even a corner or two like Trey Waynes, because those guys could come on the cheap and would be, you know, high upside guys to throw onto this roster, and could potentially, you know, drastically increase, you know, talent and productivity, etc. And then so at strong safety we have, let's see, some names that Carl Joseph, Jeff Heath, let's see, John Cyprian. I mean, there's not really a lot at strong safety. Tavon Wilson, Anthony Harris, Carl Joseph, Jeff Heath, Anthony Levine, Andrew Sendejo. I mean, there's some, you know, there's some names there, but nothing that really is like, you know, a big name guy, which is all right, because like I said, I'm not one to spend big in free agency. I want to be smart about it. I want to, you know, because to me, free agency is where you supplement. You build your team. You build a team to be successful for a long period of time, to have sustained success by building it in the draft. And so free agency is made to supplement. So you want to get guys that have high upside, but that are going to be cheap, right? And so that's why it looks like, based off of the free agents that are out there and the price tags that come along with them, it looks like safety and, you know, a couple guys like, particularly for me, Trey Waynes, at corner, that look like cheap, high upside guys that we could potentially get there. And so that means then you know, in the draft, since free agency comes first, in the draft, you wouldn't have to necessarily spend as high a draft capital on those guys. And that's where we're going to look at now is, you know, some of the prospects that are coming out in the draft. And so I'm looking at CBS, and it's essentially their big board and what they think, their rankings for the upcoming draft prospects. And so we have, for corner, Jeff Okudah is the 3rd overall ranked player for them, but the top corner out of Ohio State. And then we have Christian Fulton from LSU, Xavier McKinney from Alabama, CJ Henderson from Florida, and Trayvon Diggs from Alabama as the top 5 cornerback prospects for this upcoming draft. And obviously, like I said, this is from CBS, so this is their opinion. And like I said, this is probably the one area where I can talk the least about, if I'm keeping it real. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, like, so what I mean is like, you know, I don't know these guys' careers. I haven't watched all their film and stuff like that. I don't know all their stats and stuff. And even if I pulled up their stats, like, I don't have the kind of time to like study the film and really get a good beat on who they are. So it's going to be a little bit vague when it comes to guys that are coming out of college. And so I'm going to trust what the experts say. But again, you know, looking at who we have on the roster currently, there is definitely a lot of young guys on the roster that, you know, could potentially over time develop into good players. But we need a lot in our secondary. We only have those couple guys, Xavier Howard, Bobby McCain, you know, whatever, that are for sure things. And then we have guys like Nick Needham and Adrian Colbert who are, you know, at probably ahead of the pack with the rest. But so far at this point in their early careers, they're just kind of like okay guys, right? And Eric Rowe, okay guys that ideally would probably be backups. And so we need to find, you know, high quality starting caliber guys. I mean, they could develop into those guys. We'll have to wait and see. But then with the the young core group of guys that we have on the roster, plus some of the cheap guys that you could get in free agency, I would say that you would want to stay away from taking some of these guys in the early rounds. If you're going to take, and I would definitely say take, you know, corner and safety, you know, sure, take those in the draft, but that's probably a position that they could wait to draft until like the mid to late rounds, and then also pick up like some undrafted free agents, etc. You know, you wouldn't have to really, you know, take them early. Real quick, safety, Isaiah Simmons from Clemson is the top, you know, choice from CBS, the #1 ranked safety. Then Grant Delpit from LSU, Ashton Davis from California, Hamza Nasirildeen from Florida State. I'm sorry, I totally butchered that. And then Antoine Winfield Jr. out of Minnesota rounds out the top 5 there for draft prospects. Yeah, and you know, for me, as far as this draft goes and priority wise, as you guys know, I would never take a quarterback in rounds 1 or 2. I would take one every year in round 3 or later. I think that when you build a team, you start in the trenches, and while it might not be the sexiest thing, if we were, you know, if we, trades notwithstanding, so, you know, barring a trade up or even barring trade backs, if we just picked from the positions that we currently sit in, I would take an offensive and defensive lineman with 2 of our first round picks, and then you know, maybe another like a skill position player with the 3rd one. But probably not wide receiver, because that's probably the deepest position group we have currently on our offense, and probably not corner or safety, because as I mentioned, you know, we have a core group of young guys that could potentially rise up to be, you know, starters and good backups, etc. And then there is a decent market out there for corners and safeties that could come on the cheap and give, you know, high upside. So I wouldn't take any early from those position groups, but maybe running back or tight end to complement, you know, with Mike Gesicki or whatever. Or, you know, maybe more fucking offensive and defensive lines. Or, you know, maybe like a stud playmaking linebacker or something like that, right? Yeah, anyway. And so, you know, as far as the secondary goes, I mean, I think that's one of the areas of the team where we probably have, this is weird, like, it's weird to say, the least to worry about, even though there's a lot to worry about. Like, there's a lot of holes to fill, right? Because the only for sure ones are Xavier Howard and Bobby McCain as of right now. Even Rashad Jones, even if he's stuck around, he's not even really a sure thing to be able to stay on the field because of health concerns at this point. So, you know, we have a lot of holes to fill. We need for sure 2 safeties, 2 starting caliber safeties. We for sure need a corner opposite Xavier Howard, and then we need good solid backups to be able to, you know, come in and you know, 5 or 6 defensive back sets, whatever, right? If we go defensive back heavy for certain plays, or if, you know, guys get injured, and then obviously guys that are going to be able to also perform at a high level on special teams and returns, or as a gunner, or what have you. So it's a weird thing to say, but it's probably one of the position groups that we need to worry about the least. And certainly I would say on defense, the position group that we need to worry about the least. And I would handle it by bringing the guys that you currently have, and then trying to go after some of those cheap, high upside free agents, and then take, you know, mid to late round or undrafted guys as well to try and to round it out. And that's how I would do it going into this off season and into training camp, etc. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap up my position group analysis of the roster for cornerbacks and safeties. Like I said, tomorrow I will be doing linebackers. Again, I just want to apologize for not being able to be, more in depth and give better individual analysis, especially when it comes to, the college prospects. Hopefully, eventually, one day, my channel will be large enough, grow large enough, hopefully with y'all's help. And shout out to all my subscribers and everybody that shares my content, is helping the channel grow. It is growing. But hopefully eventually it'll grow large enough to the point where I can do it full time, and then I'll be able to put more time into watching college game and college film, and studying and watching more games from the NFL as opposed to pretty much primarily watching only Dolphins games, so I can just have a better knowledge base for you. I do have additionally, real quick, also, I do have other plans for the channel to help improve it. I'm gonna try and improve my background and my setting a little bit, even though I don't have a lot to work with here. I'm gonna do my best to fix it up and try and put up some more Dolphin stuff. And I'm just gonna continue to improve upon the channel in every way that I possibly can for you guys to put out the best content. And so with that, I'm gonna get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my show and my content and my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.